The City of Phoenix holds community budget hearings throughout April, allowing residents to comment and make suggestions on the city manager's trial budget before final decisions are made. This public discussion is among the reasons the city's budget so closely matches the community's highest priorities each fiscal year.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here. This year, we are presenting the budget for next year, and there's good news and bad news. The good news is we're not making any cuts. The bad news is we can't add very much to the budget. So we really need to hear your comments. Everything gets changed after we listen at all the budget hearings. This is the first budget hearing that the city has. And so I'm very excited to hear from all three people. So I'm expecting after the presentation to see some hands and that you ask some questions. With me is Ed Zucker, our city manager. I'll give Ed the microphone and let him do the presentation.
All right, thank you, Councilwoman Williams, and thanks for hosting here in District 1. As she said, you're in District 1 and you're in hearing number 1 as well. This is the first day, this is the first hearing, and we have 17 more after this. So you get to start us off. Just a couple notes, we do have an interpreter. If anyone needs Spanish language and Espanol interpretation, raise your hand, and you can see her. There we go. Okay, thank you. Also, we are taping this for Phoenix 11 TV. It will be on the city's YouTube channel so that you can go back and either see yourself or you can tell your neighbors to see you or see this, so they'll all be available, all 17. We are also taking minutes. Those minutes get put in the record and the council members all get a copy because we have budget hearings going. We have 5 hearings today, 2 this morning and 3 tonight. So there's no way anybody can be at all of them. So the minutes and the comments from everybody are put into the record so that the council members can read that. I want to thank our city staff who are here. Raise your hand. We have city staff who are here. They're not getting paid extra to be here, but they're able to answer questions. So if there's specific questions, they can hear and talk with you about that as well. We'd invite you to be sure to pick up one of these budget books. This has more detail. Many of you have it. And if you're an online person, it's all on phoenix.gov/budget. When you speak, we're going to ask you to come over here to the podium. That'll help the TV camera get you. You'll speak into a microphone so everyone can hear, which will be helpful. It's all set, so you don't have to touch the mic. Just speak, and it'll be loud enough for everyone to hear. So with that, we will get to the program. We have about a 10-minute video that gives a quick overview of some highlights here. It's not comprehensive, that would take too long. But you can read the detail in here, you can read it online, and there are more opportunities later. Councilman Williams has another hearing for District 1, I believe Thursday evening, is that right? We're at Buff.
It's this week.
It's this week on Thursday at Golette Buff Community Center up at 35th and Pinnacle Peak, or you can go to any budget hearing in the city, or you can send us an email and all that information will be here. So there's lots of opportunities for the whole month of April for us to get your feedback and input so that, as the councilman said, any changes we need to make by May, we can make those based on what we hear from the community. So with that, thank you all for being here. We're going to see the video and then we'll have time for comments and questions, and we'll stay here as long as we need to be able to answer everybody's questions. So with that, I'll ask our staff to roll the video.
And welcome to your first look at the City of Phoenix 2017-18 trial budget. The City of Phoenix wants to hear from you. Your ideas can help shape the budget each year. The final budget provides the plan for how the city will spend taxpayer money on key services you want and need, like police, fire, transit, city parks and swimming pools, libraries, youth and education, graffiti prevention, arts and culture, and help for seniors, and how they all could be impacted. The 2017-18 Phoenix City budget is balanced as required by state law and city charter. In this trial budget, the city is preserving the services our residents value. Out of the $1.2 billion general fund budget, there is a small $1.9 million surplus. This video will present proposals on how to use these funds. So here's how the city's budget breaks down. There are three sources: the general fund, enterprise fund, and special revenue fund. Let's start with the general fund. 3/4 of the general fund is for police, fire, courts, with the remaining 25% going for everything else like libraries, parks, senior services, arts, and administrative and support functions. Enterprise fund departments include aviation, water services, solid waste services, and the convention center. Special revenue funds come mostly from dedicated taxes that must be used for a specific purpose. For example, the Phoenix Parks and Preserves Initiative, also called 3PI, or Transportation 2050. That funding goes for transit, light rail, and streets. Under the strong leadership of the mayor and city council, we are glad to say the budget is balanced. Phoenix employees strive every day to work smarter, save money, and serve our customers. That includes making sound financial decisions, like keeping our credit rating strong, spending within our means, and looking for savings to use for important community services. Now let's take a look at the recommendations for additions to the budget for next fiscal year. In the general fund, there is a little less than $2 million extra, plus some opportunities to use funds differently to add service. First, adding 16 civilian police assistants. They will take over some administrative duties, freeing up officers so the officers can respond to emergency calls.
So adding police assistance to our existing staffing resources is going to do a couple of things. It's going to get our first responders back on those priority calls for service faster and increase our service delivery to our community.
Next, focusing on homelessness in our city. The plan is to create more outreach teams by eliminating 6 vacant positions in the Human Services Department. This would free up about $500,000 to send teams of outreach workers to homeless residents on the street to connect them with services and a place for shelter.
These services are critical to the city. These professional outreach teams would work hand in hand with our community partners, neighborhoods, police, to bring these really important services to a very vulnerable population.
For the library, there are 2 recommendations. Contract savings would make security at Burton Bar Central Library permanent, and the other is to create more opportunities to engage kids in educational programs. Now, that leaves about 1/3 of the surplus untouched. So the proposed budget calls for strategically setting aside that funding, about $641,000, into a rainy day fund. The intent is to offset a potential deficit in the 2018-19 budget, which was projected in the city's 5-year forecast. Okay, time now to get back to the 2017-18 budget proposals. Let's look at the enterprise funds. These services are funded with user fees, with the exception of the Phoenix Convention Center. The budget calls for putting a new emergency operations center and ambulance at Sky Harbor International Airport. This would ensure that if anyone at the airport needs medical attention, they can get to the hospital quickly from Sky Harbor. Next, the solid waste funds pays for our trash collection and recycling services. It's proposed to add 8 positions to enhance worker safety and increase collections. Perhaps you've heard of the Reimagine Phoenix campaign? This is all part of support for the goal from mayor and council to divert 40% of what ends up in our landfills by the year 2020 through recycling, composting, and education. Okay, now to other restricted funds, which are dedicated to specific services. The Phoenix Parks and Preserve Initiative Fund comes from a 1/10 tax to support our world-renowned parks system. To support safe use of our parks and preserve system and public safety, the trial budget would add 22 new park rangers. This would extend trailhead hours and provide additional support at flatland parks around the city.
By adding rangers, we can extend the park hours at specific locations by 2 additional hours, which means that instead of hiking in the heat of the day, you can hike a little bit later. You can drive actually into the trailhead and continue your hiking later into the evening while it's still a little bit cooler.
13 of the new park rangers would be assigned to the city's more heavily visited locations, including North Mountain, Piestewa Peak, South Mountain, and other trailheads like Echo Canyon, Cholla, and Lookout Mountain. The other 9 would be assigned to flatland parks.
Additional rangers in our community and flatland parks provide that extra layer of customer service that we currently don't have. And it'll provide an opportunity for people to get education or learn more about what's going on in the parks and just provide that extra layer of enhanced customer service.
Also included would be funding to maintain 2 new dog parks, one at Reach 11 and the other at Deer Valley Park. From the Transportation 2050 funds, the budget calls for expanding service on some of the busiest routes around the city. It would also increase weekday, midday frequency on routes serving Thomas and Camelback roads. And from the Development Services Fund, the proposal is to add several positions to keep up with increased building permits and inspections due to economic growth. Also, to increase and enhance communication and continue our efforts to streamline processes. One last important update is on the hiring of more police officers and firefighters. The city is on target to meet its recruiting goals of 3,125 officers and 1,615 firefighters.
This budget that we're talking about now includes the addition of roughly 250 officers next year, getting us to our sustainable goal.
So it's important for us to keep the public safe and live within our means. In 2009, our public safety funds were significantly in a deficit. To avoid layoffs and to balance the budget, we stopped hiring. By 2015, we were back, and we've been hiring police officers and firefighters since then.
While we're down from our peak level of staffing in the police department, we're also significantly down in our calls for service to the department. Over the last few years, as population and calls for service have increased, we're also fortunate to return to hiring officers.
So we've been recruiting in-state for a long time, but now we have that extra effort to be able to go out-state to recruit. What an amazing opportunity to increase the number of people that we find and can look for to build our staffing here in the Phoenix Police Department.
It allows a safe, effective response to whatever emergency is happening in the city of Phoenix. So whether it's a heart attack, if it's a house fire, structure fire, if it's a mountain rescue, is that by having 4-person staffing, it ensures adequate, safe response to meet whatever needs we encounter.
Now keep in mind, this year's budget hasn't been adopted just yet. Your input is important, and the City of Phoenix wants to hear from you on what the upcoming budget should look like. So to recap a few highlights, the 2017-18 trial budget calls for 16 new police assistants to free up sworn officers from administrative work, 22 park rangers, which would allow some trailheads to be open longer during the summer, eliminating 6 vacant positions to free up money to expand the city's homeless outreach. Again, this is a balanced budget, with some money set aside as a head start for future use. 17 public hearings will take place this month across all council districts, and you are encouraged to attend. Make sure you pick up a budget pamphlet outlining all the proposals and options at any of the public meeting or online at phoenix.gov/budget. You can also send your comments or questions to budget.research@phoenix.gov, or to reach us by phone, please call 602-262-4800. You can also comment on social media by using #PhoenixBudget. Thank you for your interest in the City of Phoenix budget and being a part of the budget process.
So again, all that information, if you didn't get it written down, is in here. All the phone numbers and context is in this budget tabloid as well. I neglected to say also, we are, I'm not sure if we're in District 5, but we're close to District 5. This is a joint hearing between Councilman Williams and Councilman Valenzuela. Councilman Valenzuela actually has a family funeral today, and so he's not able to be with us. But his staff member, Vanya Guevara, is here. Vanya is here for District 5. Thank you for being here, and our thoughts are with Councilman Valenzuela and his family today. So with that, we will hear from you. So again, if you can, speak from the podium. If you would like us to bring a microphone to you, we can do that as well. So we will go to our cards.
I think that's for the camera.
There you go.
Okay. First up, Craig Tripton.
Shelter services, and I'm here to talk about homelessness. We start with just the simple facts of the matter regarding CAS, which is we are facing a $200,000 deficit this next year. We have 470 beds at the downtown homeless shelter. We're facing a $200,000 deficit. That includes approximately 30% increase in private fundraising. So we're trying to do our job in that. I don't know if we'll be able to succeed in that, but that's what we face. Secondly, our current client, can you hear me?
They're saying in the back they can't, so let's have you talk
Okay.
right into it more.
Our current,
Is that better?
I really applaud the city for the outreach effort. Homelessness is a problem that's getting worse. Our eyes tell us that. No matter what the data says, and our eyes are telling us that it is a problem throughout the city. It's a problem behind dumpsters. It's a problem in the parks. It's a problem in camping in the preserves, and hopefully the rangers will help with some of that. But the problem's getting worse. And we at CAS want to increase, we right now have a caseworker ratio of 50 to 1, 50 clients for every 1 caseworker. The national standard is 30 to 1, and we'd like to make some progress in achieving that. We've got a $200,000 budget deficit for this year. To add even a portion of the 9 caseworkers we need to add to get ourselves down to 30 to 1. We're sort of budgeting $200,000 for a need for next year. Let me speak about the outreach program a second, because I think it's very important. The homeless outreach program, it's important that we have this caseworker increase because then we can free up beds. If we can move people through CAS with better services and out of CAS, I probably should talk to the audience too, and out of CAS faster, we can free up beds so that those people that do want help, and we all know that that is only a percentage of the people that we will be able to successfully outreach to, but those people that do want a bed, we want to have a bed available. We are full every night right now. That period, end of discussion. We are full every night. We need to shorten our length of stay of people with better casework, and we need to free up beds accordingly, and we need to have a place for those people to be able to go, for those people who want help. I will tell you that, and I hesitate to say this because I am in the homeless business, which is a humanitarian business, but it's also a public safety business, and I think it's really important that that people standing in medians, people panhandling at Circle K's, people handling on private property, I do think it's important that the city increase the discomfort level of those people to the extent that they want to get help, and that's what we offer. CAS has been offering regional homeless services for 30 years. We've been doing it successfully. We want to keep providing a robust service platform for what we do, and I think it's critical for us to open up beds, for us to have a robust service platform, and that means we've got to increase our case manager to client ratio or client to case manager ratio from approximately 50 to 1 to somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 1, and I will add that we are down 17% from the city funding since 2007 and 8, and you've heard that from me every year, but you've never heard a request for more money out of me in the past. You've just heard me ask you to protect what we had. But this year, we are facing a critical shortage. The homeless problem is getting worse throughout the city. Everybody's eyes tell them that in every city council district, and I think we can be a significant link in the chain to address some of that problem. And I'd like to ask you to appreciate you supporting our budget request. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Before you leave, let me ask you a question. I know that you have the caseworkers. Where do they go once they leave CAS?
They do basically 2 things. Let me back up. we have caseworkers in our building and on site, and that's very important, that they create a familial relationship with people. They see them where they sleep, they're there till 8 o'clock at night, they see them and they're involved with them. And if somebody's spinning out, frankly, our caseworkers see it and can deal with it right there. Those caseworkers also, there's a program in which we try to house people, and finding places for housing them is difficult. But unfortunately, the caseworkers, people who are housed need to have ongoing casework. And those caseworkers go out to the locations where they are. We've got one, Collins Court, in fact, up not far from here. But those caseworkers do go out and deal with people on site through the Rapid Rehousing Program. It's frankly not the best solution because they spend an awful lot of time in transit finding people. They spend a fair amount of degree. But people who are chronically homeless who are just put into housing still need services, you know, if they're going to stay in housing. Otherwise, they're going to go back to homelessness, and we've seen that cycle many, many times. So they've in order to keep them from going back to homelessness, we need to have, that's part of the caseworker load. And answer your question. Does that
Yes,
deal with it? Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much, and please.
I know it's a very complex problem, and there's no easy solution. And it takes, there are so many agencies working on it. Cass, you're the emergency shelter type, but it's the continuum of care that I think that is not recognized often enough how important that is if we want to have a long-term solution. So thank you for what you do.
I think that's right, and I do think emergency shelter provides a critical link in solving the problem, because those people that want help have to have a place to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith Preston?
Good morning, and thank you for letting me speak today. I currently serve on the Phoenix Office of Arts and Cultures Commission, and I am also a resident of Council District 1. I will tell you that I moved to District 1 in 2005, and it wasn't until that point that I had finally realized a dream, and that was to finally become a city resident. I had lived in all the suburbs, grew up in Tucson, attended high school in Nogales, but I finally made it to Phoenix in 2005, and it's because of Phoenix is such a great place to live. One aspect of being a great place to live is that it is an artful place. If you go to any city in the world that is considered a great city, the things that you remember are not necessarily the infrastructure or their type of government. You remember the arts or the experiences that you had while you were there. And I'm grateful to live in a city that values the arts and culture like the city of Phoenix does. The current budget has no cuts for that office. Yay, this is a very good thing. And while that may not mean a lot to some people, it means a lot to people like me and to my family. We appreciate going through the city streets and seeing bus shelters and seeing other projects that have been artfully concealed, covered, treated, as opposed to something that's stark and very cold. It makes us feel good about living in the city of Phoenix. For every dollar that's invested in an arts and culture organization here in the city of Phoenix, it is a great investment because it pays back 1.5 times as much as what's put into it. For every dollar spent, $1.50 comes back. And so this is something that is not only good for the city, but it's good for the people who live here. If there was one ask that we could consider for the Office of Arts and Culture, and that is a small amount of money to be set aside in addition to their fund for the maintenance of current projects. It's one thing to buy a car, it's another thing to never change its oil or never change its tires. That would be insane to think about doing that. It's the same with the investment that we make with our tax dollars when it comes to public art and our institutions that require facilities such as theaters and concert halls, etc. They need to be maintained. The money is not adequate. It probably never will be, but a small increase would do a lot to help us take care of the projects that we've already invested in. I'd like to thank you for this time. I really do appreciate living here in the city of Phoenix and having Councilwoman Williams as my council person, and I thank you for your time.
And thank you very much for serving on the Arts Commission, and I'm glad you brought up about the maintenance, because it's not just the theaters and the buildings, etc. There's a lot of artwork that I know is in the warehouse that needs refurbishing, for lack of a better word. So I think maintenance is extremely important. We've invested millions over the years in art. And we need to make sure that it stays quality and it's accessible to all of our citizens so they can enjoy it. But thank you very much for what you do. Sue Soto?
Good morning. I'm here to speak about library hours. My name is Sue Soto, and I'm a longtime volunteer at Cholla Library Metro Center and Friends of the Library member. Thank you for your library's support. We appreciate that no library cuts are being made in this year's budget. However, the library hours of operation are still insufficient for our community. In Districts 1 and 5, Cholla, Agave, and Palo Verde libraries are closed every Friday and only open 4 hours on Sundays. Unfortunately, for District 5, Yucca Library is closed 2 days in a row every Sunday and Monday. Phoenix libraries serve as community centers and provide free access to computers, homework help, free materials, employment assistance, and other free programs of all types for all ages. These limited hours of operation restrict the public from access to these free resources. So, opening every library every day remains our request. I would like to add that Friends of the Library are planning a book sale April 22nd and 23rd at Metro Center, and all are invited to Cholla Library's 40th anniversary, May 6th. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and for all the good work that you do. We really appreciate it. So our libraries have become very important. They always were, but I think they even play a greater role in our community than they used to. We have greater participation from a lot of young people, unofficial babysitters all too often. And at Cholla, I really want to thank you for fixing the artwork there. I know we have a piece that become unassembled, and you have put to work in. We're going to have a dedication, I understand. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much.
That's all the cards we have now. Come on, somebody's got to have a question. All right, come on up. Sound like a game show. But give us your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Connie Cabot. I live on 24th Drive near I-17 and Glendale Avenue. I've lived there for 41 years. Okay, now here are some of my questions. I hear about efficiency in the various city departments. Recently, there was a minor traffic accident right in front of my house. 2 cars clipped each other. Nobody was hurt. Very minor damage to each of the cars. Police came out around 5:10 p.m., didn't leave till 8. I thought, oh, this is not efficiency. I didn't say anything. I had a block watch meeting, and one of the attendees said, "Did you notice the cops here 3 hours on that minor traffic situation?" I said, "Yeah, I did. It was right in front of my house. I saw it from start to finish." He said to me, "You know, my son saw it. His kid's probably about 7 or 8, and I told the cops the kid saw it. He can describe," and they said, "No, he's a kid. He doesn't count." He was not happy about that. He was not happy about the 3-hour investigation. So the couple days later, I called the police general information line, and the person, I told him about this situation. He said, "Well, the police now have a new documentation process that they have to fill out 20 pages, even if it's a minor accident, and the most minor of accidents are going to take at least an hour and a half, and maybe you just had a trainee on the 3-hour deal." Well, I said, "I don't think we had a trainee because there was only one cop there most of the time." And he said, "Well, all that new documentation process takes this long." That is not efficiency. A minor traffic accident, that should take 30 minutes at the most. So I want to know, do we really have this, or was I given a BS reply from general information?
The chief.
Well, so a couple things on that. One is that shouldn't happen, but we have to know all the details of what else is going on there. Sometimes what looks like a minor traffic accident for the officers turns into something more as they figure out what's happened or something. So I don't know. So we can get if we can get the time and the location and the date that
I can give you that.
do that, and we'll have Chief Markley and Chief Rentry are here.
I can absolutely give you that.
One
It's in
thing I
my,
would say on a bigger picture though is, you noticed in the video, we talked about adding some civilian police assistants.
mm-hmm,
Now, they won't be able to do every one of those, but one of the specific things that Chief Williams has asked for them for is because of
mm-hmm,
non-injury accidents, where what people really need is paperwork for their insurance, is something where a civilian police assistant could do that and let our sworn police officers deal with priority 1 and priority 2 calls. So this is a first step in trying to at least free the sworn officer from that paperwork when it's something that doesn't involve injuries or a crime. And that's the point of adding those civilian assistants.
and I get that.
Yeah.
And I get that.
So yeah, if we can get when and where we can figure out what happened in that case.
Absolutely.
Sometimes sometimes it's a minor accident and then they discover there's marijuana in the car or whatever, and that takes time. I don't know in this case what happened, and it could be as you saw it and it wasn't efficient, or there could have been something else, but we can find that out.
Okay. Another suggestion that I was going to have is we need to enforce our traffic laws, because then we can earn some more revenue. And if we don't have enough police to do that, why don't we subcontract it to an outside company that they get a percentage of the fines for these type of people? Now I read in last week's newspaper that an out-of-town visitor, I can't remember, they were from Iowa or something, whatever, and they parked, and I don't think this was the city of Phoenix. They made me believe the write-in that it was outside, but it was a suburb of Phoenix, where they parked on a non-dust-proofed area, and they were fined $290. Okay? Now, just driving around Phoenix, I see this all the time. If we enforce rules and actually fine people, we could add 200 more cops. We're not fining people. I live right near Washington Park. I can almost tell you every Sunday at night, I can look in a garbage can and see glass beer bottles. I see litter all over the place. You get undercover people to enforce park rules and fine people. Number one, you're going to make some money. Number two, you're going to teach people a lesson, and you're going to curb this bad behavior. And that's exactly what it is. Bad behavior that the city of Phoenix is allowing to continue. Here's another thing that sort of bothers me, but I want to give you an example. If you had a single woman who had 7 kids, do you think she needs another one? Anybody? No, she can't afford the kids she's got. I think we need some controlled growth in the city of Phoenix. A lot of these problems that we are continuing to have would not occur if we had a controlled growth agenda. On a little bit of different angle, and I'll be the first to admit, I don't really understand all of this Phoenix pension situation, but as I understand it, once you have 20 years, you can retire. Is that correct or incorrect?
Well, there's 2 systems. There's a sworn police officer system where officers hired and firefighters before a certain time could retire after 20 years. Not many of them do, but they could after 20 years of service. That has been changed, I think, to 25 years. And for civilians, there's not a number of years of service, it's your age plus your years of experience, your years of work have to add up to a number, either 80 or 85, depending on what day you were hired.
Okay,
But on the sworn side, 20 is the minimum for officers hired before a certain date, and 25 is the minimum hired after. But not very many of them do that.
okay, then I guess my question is if somebody becomes a cop at age 21, then is it true they can start collecting a pension at age 46 when they retire?
That could be possible, yes.
Okay, then here's my question. Why isn't that age the same, raised to the same age as Social Security? That they can only take, they can retire at 46, but they're not going to collect their pension until they're age 62 or higher.
Well, I can give you a couple reasons. One is their life expectancy is shorter than the average person based on the duties they have as a police officer. And a lot of these officers just simply aren't able to continue in that line of work or anything even similar, or anything that's really manual labor. I also know that this pension plan was approved by the voters in Arizona. So it is not something the city can just automatically change or be involved in. It has to be approved through the entire process and by all the voters. And that was on the ballot about a year ago, where we upped it to the age to 25.
Okay, well,
But I think the important thing, as the councilman said, is it's a very demanding, physically stressful job. And that's why that retirement is lower, because of the amount of effort and exertion that it takes to be a police officer and firefighter. That's how it was done. And the councilman's right, that is controlled by the state of Arizona, that question.
my brother was a cop, and believe me, he's got it made. And he had it made when he was on the job.
Well, he's very fortunate because I have a husband who's a retired police officer, and he has had multiple surgeries. He could no longer hold a gun, be a backup. His hand released because of the injuries he occurred in some fights. And my son is also a retired police officer, and he was involved in an accident while on duty and had to have rods put in his back, and he's never been the same. So you are indeed very fortunate, because I know too many that have been hurt along the process. And in today's world, it's even more dangerous. Whether it's speeding, is wrong-way drivers, or dealing with the violence that's in our community anymore. People are not nice to police officers, or even firemen anymore. Firemen get shot at too. So, I mean, they live in a very dangerous world nowadays. It's a whole different world.
Well, truthfully, I understand it. Like I say, my brother was a cop, my father was a fireman, and I do understand the danger. At the same time, they like doing, my dad loved being a fireman.
It's a
My
call.
brother loved being a cop.
It takes a special person with a calling to do that kind of work.
Okay, and some of this I've already talked about. I really think.
I kind of need you to wrap up.
Oh, okay. Again, I think we should be a little bit harder on people that display bad behavior in our city. And we have a lot of bad behavior in this city, and it's not getting better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And for someone who wasn't going to talk, you did a great job. Anybody else that has a question? Come on up. Give us your name and address for the record.
Good morning. My name is Tamara Klein. I live at 6132 North 15th Avenue. I'm in Daniels District. I just have a question. It seems of late, I don't know who handles the infrastructure for the city. And I'm talking about general things like street maintenance, wires on the poles. The wires has really been a big question for me lately. As I drive around, I'm noticing that there have been new, heavier wires hung very low on the poles to the point where they're no longer clearing rooftops. They're so heavy, and all the boxes and whatever added to them, that they're literally pulling the poles off plumb, as much as 20 degrees in some cases. You can drive down a street and see poles going every which way depending on how the wires are pulling them. In some cases, wires are being intersected in the center of the wires going down to individual houses. It looks very sloppy, and no one seems to take care of that. It was interesting, last week I was driving through to Glendale, and it was so odd crossing from Phoenix to Glendale and noticing as I'd go into Glendale, the appearance of the city is just so much nicer. There are not dead streets along the medians, along the roadways, dead trees, I mean. Is there someone looking at this and cleaning this up and taking care of it?
Good question. You actually have two different things.
I did.
The poles, that's APS, Salt River, could be Cox Cable, CenturyLink, depends on, they all use the same poles. That is not in our purview. We could call and complain if you tell us where and see if we could get them to go out and check them and make sure that they're safe and abiding by all the regulations. For the streets, there's a big difference. Considering District 1 is bound by Glendale's boundaries as well. So you can tell a difference, absolutely. Phoenix is old. I mean, we like to think that this area is, clear up to Happy Valley Road is new, but it's actually almost 30 years old. And since 07, 08, landscaping was one of the things that was really, after funding cut, it just didn't happen. Road maintenance went from 35 years to every 65 years we go look at a road. And it's very evident that our roads and our landscaping are in big trouble. They look horrible. 2050, the tax that was passed, it contained a healthy, was it 30 million?
For streets,
Yeah, for streets.
over 100
Over $100
million.
million that will be going into street, either construction, repair, continuing maintenance. It's now down to 25 years is how often they will be repaired, and going in and doing a lot of the landscaping. I know in District 1, one of the problems we had is not only did the plants die, it's because the irrigation system broke. And so all the irrigation has to go back in. I am furious when I look at some of our streets, and I don't know why we did it, but we planted trees that grew right up in the power lines, and now you have these trees that are either bent, cut, or split, and they are ugly as the devil. They can't possibly provide shade to anything. And how they stay up in some of this wind, I'll never know. And we are replacing a lot of those, going to replace them with it, or not plant any trees, is what I'm saying, under a power line in the future. Duh, we should have learned our lesson.
Well, when they make
Put in very low water maintenance.
When they make those power lines so low, it's impossible to plant anything under them. Even the trees that were able to survive before are now being cut apart and killed.
Oh, I know, I understand completely, so, but I think Glendale's a much newer city, and they have that luxury. We had that for a long time, but now we've aged. We're no longer the kid around town. The suburbs are much, frankly, more beautiful than ours because they have the luxury of the new landscaping into the streets. And most of their power lines are buried, if you notice. So we all know that. We're working towards it. It's a high priority for the city. In fact, we just put out a contract to hire more landscapers, and Parks is training a horticulturist that's supposed to be special knowledge and help with the landscaping and the trees along the roadways.
Boy, I certainly hope so. I'm a Phoenix native. I've lived here over 60 years. And to see what's going on with the trees now is heartbreaking. They're planting them for no reason. I'm under the impression that commercial lots like a CVS near us is supposed to have trees planted on their property. They're planting those trees, they're growing them up, and then they're cutting them back to 2 branches, so you have a full-grown tree with 2 branches. It makes no sense, and the trees are going to die. It's a waste of time. It almost feels like they're being told to cut them back by the companies that just want to replace them and plant something else. It makes no sense, and it's very ugly.
I totally understand and have to agree with you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Well, I don't see any takers. I thank you all for coming and for you who got up and were brave enough to speak and tell us what we really need to prioritize. And thank you all. And you're invited to attend every budget hearing and reiterate what you said, or if you think of something new, bring that up. Thank you all.
You have been watching a community budget hearing held recently in Phoenix. For questions, comments, or ideas, please visit phoenix.gov or call 602-262-4800. You can also send feedback through social media by using #PhoenixBudget. This video can also be seen online at phoenix.gov/PHXTV or youtube.com/City of Phoenix AZ.